Memory Kick. Written and read by D.G. Chichester. He was a hacky sack player of some repute, gaining fame as a busker on the boardwalks, keeping the sack flying high to beats and rhythms and laughs and cheers. Few could match his skill, and those that tried to keep up soon became victim of the crowd's jeers. He'd perfected his craft over many months, as a young child, when his sailing camp sailboat had been caught in a sudden squall and blown way out to sea, a Gilligan's Island-style storm and consequence that landed him on a deserted strip of sand. His supplies amounted to what was left of the boat: 12 feet of rope, the torn and tattered sail, a half bottle of water, a bag of Doritos, a frisbee, and a hacky sack. The early wave of fear and tears had become boredom, broken by a game of how far he could throw the frisbee, a game he always won, being the only contestant. Until one day, skimming it out over the water, a shark had jumped out from the waves and shredded the plastic to limp shreds he could only watch slip slowly down into the water. Fortunately, the island had food, and he'd watched enough Survivor to handle the rudimentary actions of gathering supplies and keeping himself just north of malnourished. As for his entertainment, although he'd never entertained the idea of a hacky sack and was more likely to trip over his own feet than keep a beanbag going with one, what else was there to do? One kick became two, became countless, mad skills measuring up alongside a stoic nature that developed out of necessity. Who was there to talk to except himself? And both he and himself were never much for the art of conversation. He never succumbed to Tom Hanks and Castaway level of loony, and giving his sack a name like Wilson. Then again, that may have had more to do with the fact that it lacked labeling he could easily glom a name from. Chances are good he'd live out the rest of his days, kicking and tanning, eating fruit and sipping coconut water, with the occasional foray into fish that had been thrown onto the shore after a rough storm. They would never compare to the crunchy, salty, frozen fish sticks his mom would microwave back in the world, but so long as they didn't sit too long and go bad, he could make do with a sizzle, crackle, cook over the flames he'd learned to conjure, Prometheus Jr.-like, using his glasses to focus the sun's rays into fire. One lazy day in a long string of lazy days, he'd set himself a goal of the highest kick he could make, and he'd surprised himself as his hacky pal arced up over the top of the tallest palm tree. Goal. Score. He'd won again. Take that, self. Except in his moment of triumph, he'd also managed to lose everything when said hacky hit one of the long leaves of the tree on the way down and promptly bounced back to become lodged atop the towering plant. There was no choice but to climb. A slow shimmy to the top of said palm became slower still as every glance downward raised more anxiety at his increasingly higher heights. He thought he'd be able to simply slide back down from the top, but once he had his hands on his toy, he found he couldn't release the tight grip he'd secured around the trunk of the tree. His fear of heights was so extreme that his success in reclaiming his lost toy would soon be outmatched by his certain demise, trapped above the sand and sustenance he'd learned to navigate into his teen years. In truth, though, his high-climbing adventure turned out to be not just a rescue of his beloved plaything, but a rescue for himself as well. For close to that very moment, a drone hobbyist on a nearby pleasure yacht had sent his high-flying aircraft up for an aerial view of the cute little island they were passing by. When the video stream beamed back the wide-eyed hacky sack champion from high among the palm leaves, it was SOS all hands on deck. Lower the rescue boats, throw out the life buoy. Back in the world did not mean back to normal. While he had memories of home, he didn't have a name or address to go along with them. That sand and sun had baked out the details. Back on shore, but still adrift. Kicking himself for having forgotten led to kicking that hacky as he walked along, which led to something of a following, which brings us right back around to that boardwalk busker makes good. Because it's that which got him the attention of a marketing rep from the Hell Yeah Hacky Sack Company, LLC, said rep enjoying a summertime snow cone as he calculated the potential of this high kicker to put their brand on the map. A professional contract followed, with a city-to-city tour and his face prominently displayed wherever toys and sporting goods are found. As he exited the latest stop on the tour, Tony's Terrific Hobbies and Games, he looked up from his kick to see a small gray woman standing in front of a parked gray car. Both had seen better days. "I knew your face," she said. Pulling open the passenger side door, reaching into the glove box, she pulled out a small photo that she then pressed into his hands. Failing chemicals and time had faded the image to almost nothing, but he could still make out the young boy about to step into a sailboat for no more than a few hours of adventure. Turning the photo over in now trembling hands, he saw what she had long ago written with trembling fingers. Kenny. He let the hacky sack fall to the curb and got into the car, hoping the taste of fish sticks was just as he remembered them. Thanks for listening to Memory Kick. Written and read by D.G. Chichester. Copyright 2020 by D.G. Chichester.